Bitch, I'm about to blow up. Say what? Bitch, I'm about to blow up.
What's going on, guys? This is Silent Mike from Super Training Gym, Mark Bell's Powercast, here to answer more questions for you. Got tons on Instagram here to plow out. We're going to drill these down. Hopefully you'll leave some questions in the comments below to be answered in future videos, or you can follow me at Silent Mike with 2Ks on Instagram. I'll be getting some questions from there, here, and there. Shout out to my man Stone Cold, Broken Skull Ranch Cap, my man Muhammad Ali sitting in on all these Q&As. Here we go. What do we got? What do we got? Too many questions, can't keep up. Should I deadlift if I can't sit into it? Knee pain won't allow me. I can pull over 440, but looks more like a stiff leg. I mean, that depends on your goals, obviously. If your goals are just to get stronger and lift weights, then lift however you can. Lift within your means. If you have to stiff leg a weight up, because that's the only way you do it pain-free, by all means, go ahead. If you're trying to be a competitive power lifter and lift the most amount of weight, you'll probably have to figure out that knee pain. It might be a mobility issue. Who knows? I'm not a doctor, and that's limited information. But to get your legs involved and kind of get your hips below your shoulders in both the sumo and conventional deadlift is the way to deadlift the most amount of weight. Who has the better free throw form? Shaquille O'Neal. I think Wilt Chamberlain, Dwight Howard, Rajon Rondo, or Joakim Noah. This is a very detailed question. For those of you who don't know, I grew up playing basketball my whole life. This needs a little analyzing here. I'd probably go with the actual best form. I might have to give it to my man Shaq. Even though that ball kind of looks like a marble in his hands, he has a little bit of a follow-through. His elbows are kind of 90-90. That's 90 degrees, 90 degrees. Probably the best form out of all of them. Who's the actual best shooter? Percentage-wise, it might be like Joakim Noah, even though he kind of does that granny, 3-year-old, two-handed deal. Man, there's way too many questions going on. This guy asked why you use a compression cuff. That's a compression cuff from Slingshot. I've tried it, but it just cut off the circulation on my hand. The compression cuff's just to help some tendonitis or pains that we get from getting lifted and getting beat up. If it's cutting off circulation, try to stretch it. The material will stretch over time, or you might just have the wrong size. How to break through a bench plateau or any plateau while cutting. All of these questions are a little vague. But going through, depending on how experienced you are, your lifting career, how many years under the iron you have, it will be very hard to get stronger while you're losing weight. So if you're trying to break a plateau while you're cutting, it's going to be very, very progressively more difficult to do as you get more experience in lifting. In the beginning, it might be possible to kind of cut some body fat as you clean up your nutrition and get your programs going and still gain strength, but it's very unlikely. When should knee wraps be used in training when not prepping for a meet? All these opinions are kind of mine, and I'm just trying to share what I get from lifting with big-time lifters and being lucky enough to be surrounded by some of the best in the world. There's a lot of lifters that compete in knee wraps that train in them year-round. Some of the Lillibridges do stuff similar to that. Basically, they're in wraps year-round, and they're obviously, Eric just broke the all-time squat record, I think 1,025, the biggest squat ever raw. But there's also guys that will go in cycles, and they'll do maybe 4 weeks no wraps, 4 weeks in a belt, and then 4 weeks wraps and belt. I believe Chad Wesley Smith, maybe even Brandon Lilly, kind of train like that, and they're also amazing squatters. So you got to figure out what works for you. If wraps are something you need to get used to, then you need to use them more often in your training. For overall strength goals, would you recommend squatting every day, like the Bulgarians, or something more like twice a week, Lillibridge method? Actually, the Lillibridge method, you typically only squat once a week, and it's every other week you're going heavy, and every other week you're going light. But maybe like West Side, you're squatting twice a week, or the conjugate method, that is. For overall strength, it's going to depend. Similar to the last question, there's world record holders and really strong mofos that train both ways. Some guys squat heavy. Stan Efferding basically squatted heavy every other week. That's twice a month. Then there's also guys, like my boy Bryce Lewis, even Lane Norton. Lane Norton's squatting heavy, 4 times a week sometimes in his peaking cycles or his overreaching cycles. and he squats 650 in sleeves. So it all depends on you. As you become more advanced in lifting, try different things. Give it 6 months a go at squatting twice a week, and then 6 months squatting once a week, and then maybe 3 months trying to squat 3 or 4 times a week. See how your body reacts, see how you recover, see how you feel, injuries, all that's going to play a role, and also your lifestyle. If you're sitting at a desk all day, you might be able to get away with it, but if you're working construction or a more tedious job, or not tedious, but a more demanding job, it might be really difficult to squat that often. At least recover from it. Are Olympic shoes worth the money? For Olympic lifts and high bar squats, I say it would depend on your mobility and your goals. I think if you have the means and you need them to hit depth, meaning you have kind of tight hips, maybe tight ankles and calves, that you need a heel to reach depth, then they would be worth your money if you have that money. But if you don't get to eat that week and you have to buy Olympic shoes, then they're obviously not worth that money. Hey, Mike. Hey, buddy. I like the Westside type template, but I find my squat and bench benefit from a higher frequency. What would be the best way to tweak the program to include 3 times a week squatting and benching? Greetings from Norway. What's going on, Norway? Basically, the Conjugate Westside template is made so you squat once a week heavy and once a week dynamic or speed work. Anytime you start to change that, you're not really doing Conjugate or Westside anymore. Louis Simmons is a genius and put in his research, and he figured out this formula that works for him and his lifters. If you want to squat 3 times a week, you're not going to be able to do max effort necessarily. Max effort in Westside means you're going for an all-out 1-rep max. So squatting 3 times a week and benching 3 times a week is fine, but you're going to have to manage that volume and probably lower your intensity a bit to keep up with that. What else we got? Are triples the most efficient way to approach strength training? And what point should linear progression stall? Linear progression will stall at a different point for every lifter depending on genetics, rest, blah, 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 recovery. Typically, I wasn't smart enough to start that way. I just wanted the gym started lifting. I wish I kind of started with a good plan, but I didn't. I'd say maybe a year, maybe 2 years for some people. It's hard to say. Just go after it, and you'll find yourself stalling. Just work as hard as you can. And once you start hitting plateaus, or you can't add that extra 5 pounds, switch things up. And no, I don't think triples are the most efficient way to approach training. Sets of 5, sets of 10, sets of 2, sets of 1, sets of 4. No one does sets of 4, but sets of 4 will work. Some of you guys put some real thought into your questions here. I know this poster, but this guy is a thinker. Are cock push-ups a viable means to increase sexual stamina? And I'm sorry, my friend, but they're not. Cock push-ups are a viable means to build up girth, and that's all they're good for. They're not going to help your sexual performance. I believe the sexual performance is a mental game. This whole thing is about building your body, building your mind. Cock push-ups build the girth, the consistency and hard work. That'll help the stamina, my friend. What are we at? 8 minutes? Oh my God, are you guys still around? We'll go to about 10 minutes. We'll see how many of you suckers last around for this thing. How do you deal with hemorrhoids? I don't know, man. How do you deal with them? What are these questions? Mark and Jim, that's Mark Bell and Jim McD, my co-hosts on the Mark Bell's Powercast. Check that out on iTunes. Just hit subscribe. Go download that thing. Tell your friends. Help a brother out. They talk about being in the sport for a long time, that they accumulated injuries and then had to deal with them. How are these injuries affected your daily lives? Aches, limited movement, pain, end ranges. How is life as a scarred warrior? Well, obviously those questions are from Mark and Jim, and this is Silent Mike's YouTube, so I'll answer for myself. I think Mark's been through a lot of real injuries, and Jim's had a couple injuries, but most of us, when we talk like that, are just talking about being hurt or being banged up, and I think there's a fine line that people need to define for themselves what really being injured is, and just being beat up, bumped, grizzled. All of us are a little grizzled after you're powerlifting for a while. It's a tough sport. It's tough on your joints, and you're constantly pushing your own personal barriers. So bumps and bruises are bound to happen. Luckily enough for myself, I've never been truly injured. I've had some pretty bad pains and aches that have, made me scale back my training, but nothing that's been too bad. All of us are always, limping around a little bit for a couple weeks after a really bad deadlift or a really heavy deadlift. but nothing crazy. And how do we deal with them? You deal with them the best you can. My shoulder's bugging me a little bit right now, so I take extra time in my warm-up for bench, extra time to get under the bore in my squats. That's Rascal Apparel. I know you guys couldn't notice because I look so much better in it than Omar does, but that's Rascal, my boy, Omar Usuf, Ass Muff. This is his shirt company. It's amazing. Check it out. Go get a bunch of them. That's me. That model is me, by the way. He's so handsome. How is my boy Stormcloud, a.k.a. Fat Dan, progressing in his weight loss? For those of you that don't know, Fat Dan's a newer lifter at Super Training. He's a little overweight. He's about 6'4". I believe when he started about 335 pounds. He's about 22 years old. So I'm helping him kind of transition to a little bit healthier lifestyle, cut back some weight so we can build back up that strength. And that is a series going on supertraining.tv. Check it out. We have about 2 updates. I've been out of town, and then Dan went out of town. So we'll do another update this week for you guys. And last question of the day. What's the best way to pick up bad bitches? You know, I don't know all this lingo that you guys are talking about, but these young kids, these hooligans, you know, bad bitches on fleek. I don't even know what that means. But basically, the best way to pick up anything is to use a neutral spine and a little bit lower legs. A little bit of leg drive. And that is it from Silent Mike. Check in next time. Please subscribe. Tell your friends about how awesome I am. Where I'm going to hopefully keep this thing going. So leave your questions below in the comments. Also follow me on Instagram or supertraining.tv. That's Mark Bell's Powercast on iTunes. And I'll see you guys later. I'm out.